There have been pre-submitted questions, as Estelle said, so I'll take one pre-submitted question and then we'll take another one from the floor. I'm just going to get up and rove around because I'm worried not everyone may be able to hear. So I'm speaking. Is Stephanie Thompson here tonight? Steph.
Just make a quick point that Newcastle are actually doing detailed measurements of pollution outside schools on an hourly basis in the context of the weather, and there are 22 schools being monitored digitally in Newcastle at the moment, so that might help the case in Liverpool. I wanted to say that in today's Guardian regarding shipping, although they are keeping the emissions from the ship into the air cleaner through scrubbing, there's a huge problem, according to the British Ports Authority, in terms of the scrubbing material being dumped on the seabed. And that will cause a huge problem with fishing around ports. And some ports, there will be a prohibition on fishing. So I think Liverpool needs to anticipate the problems that may arise by learning from places like Rotterdam, because they have a very good air quality programme there.
So a few points there about monitoring air pollution, how it can be done, innovations in shipping. I'll just add this other one from the pre-submitted question, if I may. Liverpool City region has the lowest achievement rate for air pollution in the north of England. King's College London estimate over 800 deaths annually as a result. How will this deadly problem be managed in the present and future development in Liverpool? Bill, may I start with you?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, building roads is, I mean, I think I probably already answered this in what I said at the start. If we want to cut deaths from poor air quality, we've got to find alternatives to what is causing that poor air quality. It really is as simple as that. But you've got to take a step back and look at what's needed. You've obviously got to have a cleaner approach to energy. You've got to have a cleaner approach to transport. And you know, the reality is that for the city region, we are dependent on the government. Highways England is a government body on the decisions they make. Actually, what we need is for the government to make that switch, and you've got to tie up government policy with regional policy. You can't do one on the other, one on its own, and I'd add into that internationally too. So if we're serious about climate, if we're serious about environment, if we're serious about public health, it's a global issue as well as a local issue, and I think you've got to bring them together. So we've got to move away as quickly as we can from just building roads.
John, do you want to come back on it?
Yeah, thanks for that. That thing about Newcastle, I've been onto that one already, and that this is what to do, because we're trying to obviously encourage, shall we say, rather than fight with Sefton Council, to do the same thing here. Unfortunately, the pollution monitoring system that Sefton Council wants us to accept is for the headmaster of the school to decide if he wants to put a diffusion tube at his school. Then it is up to the headmaster to check the levels of pollution in the tube and for him to report it to the Environmental Health Office. So when you look at the actual returns that come through the council, time and time again, through the annual Sefton report, you will see that there's absolutely no school in the entire borough with a digital monitoring system. Now that is down to the Sefton Council local authority. The local authority is responsible in its entirety, not separated. You can't separate out the Highways England roads and the rest of it. In its entirety, the local authority is responsible for the pollution monitoring and the protection of the communities. The Sefton Council are failing in that duty.
Who's going to be prosecuted for the manslaughter?
Well, there are cases going on now actually already elsewhere, but they will come through. In actual fact, one of the issues that crops up time and time again is this legality. You can go online and get online and get this. These are the High Court judgments. These are the High Court judgments which found who is responsible for what. Sefton Council have chosen to ignore them.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good points. I think it's only fair to come over to you, Councillor.
Thank you for that. Thank you, John. I mean, that is your opinion and you're entitled to it.
Quite right.
Sefton Council actually does its level best. You're right. And the head teachers, be it him or her, in those actual schools, can choose to put in diffusions, and we can't force them to actually take any other way. What we have done, though, is we've actually located a sophisticated real-time air quality station which is near down by the ports, and we're actually slowly beginning to look at this right across the borough. We've actually got some funding where we are going to introduce this, and it's no excuse really, but unfortunately we've lost nearly 50% of our funding, and we've targeted vulnerable adults and children and actually work to keep people in, well, not keep them in care, to actually keep them out of care really, and to actually help older people. And yes, in some ways, you know, we probably do need to spend more money, but we're struggling at the moment to actually do that. And what we're trying to do is, through our clean air zone and through everything else, is to actually improve the air quality, and we are deeply, deeply committed to improving the air quality of our children. And, you know, that's all I can say, really, and I find it quite disturbing that anyone would think that local councillors who live in the local area do not have a passionate commitment to actually looking after their local children and working with local people.
Okay.
Can I just say, sort of going beyond the, I know it's obviously it's topical because of where we are, but I think it's really important to go wider than just the very localised issues. I'm not saying that the localised issues don't matter, they do, but I think when we're talking climate crisis, we need to look at the whole systems that we're working with, as well as the budgets that councils do and don't have, and look at how we can create better systems together and to work together, and that's voluntary sector, that's private sector and statutory sector. Yes, hold people to account, yes, be critical when necessary, but look at how we can do things together. We have the Tyndall Centre, who nationally have set budgets for all local authorities based on the Paris Agreement, have suggested that Liverpool City Region has a carbon budget of 48 million tonnes for 80 years. At the current rate, we'll have used it in 7 years. That isn't just about the very localised areas. It's also about us. It's about what we buy, how we move around, what work we do, and all of those things. We do need to get the structures right, and they're not fit for purpose. And that's partly because our systems are outdated. Our economic processes are out of step with the environment, and we know that, but working together is crucial.
Well, you wouldn't be surprised that I couldn't agree more with what you just said there. You know, one of the things that strikes me is that everyone at the moment, every institution loves to line up and say they support the Paris Agreement on tackling climate change. So national government will do that. Of course, Peel Ports will do that. Highways England will say, yes, we support the Paris Agreement. Every local authority will as well. And yet, pretty much any of the options we're talking about tonight fly directly the opposite direction of what we need to do to tackle the Paris Agreement. It's worth knowing that the one sector of the UK economy where we're still seeing carbon emissions growing at the moment is transport. That is an absolute scandal, particularly because it's one of the easiest ones to do something about if we really put our mind to it. And actually within that, globally, we see increasing emissions from shipping being a huge, huge problem. So the big question for Peel Ports, if they were here, or indeed Highways England, is why on earth are you planning to build more infrastructure that will just make the problem even worse and lock us into higher carbon emissions over the decades ahead? You know, the shipping industry has been pretty useless, to be honest, at addressing this issue globally. I'm not just talking locally, but globally, in that they haven't really come up with anything other than the tiniest incremental proposals about how they could try and reduce carbon emissions from shipping. And of course, what they'd really like to see is see it grow so much that would completely outdo that anyway. So here's the thing. You were saying earlier about the Tyndall Centre. Yes, the Tyndall Centre have suggested that for shipping to contribute to the Paris goals, they would need to cut emissions by at least 8% globally, carbon cuts in that shipping sector. But actually, of course, we know the Paris Agreement isn't anything like strong enough. So the Tyndall Centre has also looked at actually what will be science-based targets for the shipping industry, and it's more like 20% cuts per annum, every year, in other words, to their carbon budget. Not increasing the scale of the shipping industry, but massively cutting those emissions. And if the shipping industry doesn't do that, then it falls on other industry sectors to do it instead. So big questions there. If the shipping industry wants to duck its responsibility on this issue, who's going to do that instead?
Thank you very much. Stuart, can I go over to you, because you mentioned before this road was being built for Peel Ports. That's your accusation. We have here a pre-submitted Margaret Roberts, if you're in the audience. Margaret, I'll just come over to you. Why is Peel Ports not working with or listening to the community? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I've been a couple of times in Highlands, England, I've been here, and people were very angry the first time and the second time, and we said to them, you're not listening to anyone. I did say to people, I live on this road here, two roads away from the dock road and 2 roads away from the dual carriageway. Does any of you live there? And I was so upset, because they just look at you as if to say, you know, oh no, but you know, they're getting on with it. They're drilling holes in there now. There's loads of people here with bad COPD and really bad chest problems and everything. And our kids are living with this. Everyone's dropping, I'm telling you. Everyone's dropping. And it's disgusting that they don't even listen to people. And I said to them, what price do you put on people's health? Because when I got a letter back a few years ago saying, I asked about building a tunnel in London and under Stonehenge. I said, well, why not here, where everybody's living in it? They said, well, the economy's not up there. I said, there's the economy over there, Peel Public's about it. I said, but also, I said, how can you say we're only worth £1 and they're worth £2.50? So where is the sense in all that? They can go home overnight, and so do people in Peel Ports. They don't live at 24/7.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent points there. Probably in agreement, but have you spoken to Peel Ports? What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, we met with them in 2018 in this sort of March, April time, so quite a while ago now. We put it to them. You know, I think it's really important to say that the two, you can have a thriving port and respect people's health and the environment. That's just not happening at the moment. We put it to them that there was a golden opportunity for Peel Ports to sort of change their image, really, work with local communities to come up, and all the various stakeholders, local government, the local city region, to come up with a sensible solution to this problem. The problem is that this is kind of coming from the top down, so we've got a government which loves to build roads, it's got an agency which is quite willing to do it for them, and the problem started by the second it instructed Highways England to do that, we were only going to ever get options for a road. So they weren't interested in that. They wouldn't do anything that would put them at a commercial disadvantage to any other port in the UK. So at the moment they're getting a taxpayer-funded road. It's called the Port of Liverpool Access Scheme. We recently submitted freedom of information requests to find out how closely Highways England and Peel Ports were working together, which are really revealing some of the terminology from Peel to Highways England. We've worked tirelessly to secure funding. If it was to be withdrawn, it would be disastrous. So we flagged this. We wrote to the Transport Minister responsible, and I know Bill's done the same, bringing this to their attention. Why is this allowed to happen? It goes back to the point we're making about the level of influence that big business have. You know, if you want to operate in our borough and you want to make money out of our borough, which incidentally is loaded onto the back of trucks and driven out of the area, then you've got a responsibility. It's more than just a glossy brochure saying, you know, what we're doing as a company. Yeah, you need to sort of live those statements.
I'll come to you. Who's more powerful, you or Peel Ports? Because at the moment, it looks like Peel Ports are walking all over this community.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely understand why people have the concern, and I mean, I had conversations with Peel, as people will know, and I've put the same point to them that Stu has, and we've had the exchange recently with ministers. But yeah, they said to me, we just want better transport links to make the most of our investment in the port. We don't have a view whether it should be road or rail, and I said to them, that just isn't good enough. But that was the last discussion I had with them, which is now 2 years ago. I'm afraid we're not going to change their view easily. I think you need a much bigger lobby to change the view of big business. I think national government, international collaboration is the way to put the pressure on these big firms so that they change their attitude and they start to act in the interests of climate and local public health as well. But I just want to make a point about transport funding, because I think one of the big problems is the nature of transport funding. It's not just per person, it's based on population density, and that's why London and the immediate southeast always gets the big bucks, unless it's some special scheme like a tunnel under Stonehenge. And I have raised in Parliament and said, why can Stonehenge have a tunnel and we can't have one from the Port of Liverpool? So thank you for the reminder. And got absolutely nowhere with Chris Grayling at the time, but then no one ever got anywhere with Chris Grayling while he was still Transport Secretary. So there's a real problem in the way the Treasury does this. It is all on density, and it always favours London and the South East. So the North as a whole, in fact, most areas outside London and the immediate South East, the M25 essentially, really lose out, and we lose out particularly badly. And until that calculation changes, this isn't going to change, and we are going to be stuck with this kind of approach to the cheapest option, which is of the road. And that Highways England said to me when I had a meeting with them, by the way, just to finish on this point, you are lucky to get this road, be grateful. That was essentially their attitude. It's got to stop, we've got to move away from this, and we've got to look after communities, the environment, and the climate, and the sooner the better. Thank you.
Can I answer that point can I just answer the question that lady was talking about before, who cares about our health? Just as a matter of interest, and it also follows on from a comment that Paulettte made earlier, about the funding for local government. Yeah, this area has been hit particularly hard, very, very, very hard with the austerity programme. However, having lost the third case in the High Courts, and which I've just given a copy of the information to our friends here, the government, Michael Gove, immediately made £255 million available for local authorities to address the immediate impact needed to sort their areas out. Sefton did not apply. Highways England also, from our latest discussions with them, they have £75 million provided for them to look at the air quality impact on the roads through residential areas. We asked them, why can't we have digitised monitoring? They said, we only have to put up diffusion tubes. That's not going the one step further that's needed to address the issue, as we say. We've just been saying before that we need all to get involved and take the extra step forward, go the extra mile. And coming back to Peel Ports, when we met Peel Ports, before we met them, we actually done some research into the development of the port in itself. The port was developed entirely under a harbour revision order, which meant that it did not have to attempt to comply with local authority planning regulations. And on top of that, the environmental impact assessment for this port here was done by a sister company of Peel Ports. Not an independent study, it was done by themselves, for themselves. Bill knows Peel Ports very well. I'll tell you now, we got a document handed, or I got a document handed to me from the Insider Media. This is the Business Insider, which quoted the Chief Operating Officer of this port here, Mark Walters, when he said, we have the right people in the right places to push on with this project now. But he refused to explain what that meant. Also, They flatly refused to take any responsibility for anything that happens on the traffic or any business outside of this port gate. They flatly refused.
Thank you very much.
I take a bit of issue with what you said before about the roads built for people. The roads here are not built for people. Most of the people who live in that area don't actually own cars. The cars are coming from other areas or automated fees. So those roads are not built for those people who live there. So I think that's important. The life expectancy there is 71 years of age. The ward I represent, Browne, stands at 82 now. The air quality has got to be contributing to the poor life, and health of the people in that area, and we need to be doing something about it. We won't get anywhere by throwing a community under the bus, literally, for another. What we need is less traffic, less roads, and less emissions. The emissions that are coming from all of these vehicles are not just, harming our health, our lungs, they're also contributing to the climate emergency. It's all linked. So we need less of all of this. There's plenty. I also work for the British Lung Foundation, and we do loads of studies on air quality. I can show you tons and tons and tons. There was one out last week that was done by King's College that shows again that the air quality in Lineker and Derby is absolutely disgraceful. And that's what needs to be done. So what we need to do now is have a clean air zone and keep the traffic out of our communities. Thank you.
Yep, I'll take 2 questions.
I just want to say that to the council, this is not a new problem, and I think it's really unfortunate to try and blame recent austerity cuts for the lack of engagement with this, because this is not new at all. This road has always been bad, and it's gotten significantly worse. And I'd also just like to make a statement, and I'd like to comment particularly about why Steve Rotherham isn't here. And I'm really disappointed to see that, because you had an opportunity. You've got a regional mayor, which is from the government, and he's not here representing this, and it should be a really high priority. And it doesn't seem to be. There's lack of visibility. And I'd like to comment on that.
Councillor, there's a number of points there. Why no clean air zone? Why didn't you apply for funding from Michael Gove? And the client, there's a number of things I'll hand over.
First of all, I can't answer those questions to why we didn't apply for funding. I'd have to go back into the organisation and bring you a response back, because I didn't know that question was going to be asked. Can I just say about... Yeah, fine. Steve Rotherham, I can't speak for Steve Rotherham either. I don't know why he couldn't attend. I've got no idea, so I can't possibly comment. I think we actually do all have to work together, really. Nothing's perfect. I'm sure that we've made mistakes. But nevertheless, we are committed to a clean air zone, and we are actually working on that. We have committed over £150,000 to actually develop it, because that's what it costs in the second stage. We're also trying to work with Liverpool, because Liverpool are also going to institute a clean air zone, and this is where it becomes complicated, because if they actually decide to issue or introduce certain charging areas, and you come out of Liverpool and you're charged, and then we decide to introduce more as you come into Sefton by Miller's Bridge, we're actually going to face all kinds of really difficult complications. So we actually have to work through that as well. We have to put our business case to the government, and then we actually have to hopefully get it processed and get it agreed. I mean, I'm here. Sorry, I'm not as good as Steve Rotherham, and I haven't quite answered the questions maybe. So. No, but what I'm saying is I don't know where he is, and I don't know why. And he may have a very good reason. The Liverpool City region actually have a clean air group committee, air quality committee, and that's actually working right across the 6 districts and actually trying to understand all the different levels of what's actually required. It would appear to me that Sefton and Liverpool are the 2 areas that are suffering the greatest impacts at the moment, and they're the ones who are actually trying to push forward for clean air zones. Every single local authority on Merseyside has now declared a climate climate emergency, except Knowsley, which is doing so in March. So they are trying to work towards it. They're trying to do their best. No, we're not perfect. I don't know why we didn't apply for that funding. I just have to ask the question, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Could I say a bit about Steve Rotherham? So just, I know he's not here tonight, but we did get a meeting with Steve Rotherham on the 20th of January. I don't know if you've seen our write-up on that. So if you go and say rimrosevalley.org, it's in the campaign news there. What's frustrating about the Liverpool City region is that it's possibly the answer. Devolution has got the potential to be all the things we want it to be, getting money from central government for all the things we need it to be. But it's not happened. We've got a figurehead, but doesn't have those powers, doesn't get the money for transport, and doesn't get the ability to make those decisions. He's making all the right noises, and we've had a couple of statements about the importance of green space. I carry this around with me most days now because I'm sad. But the last year's Green Summit from the Liverpool City region was actually a really positive day. I think anybody who was there came away from it feeling, there's something that's going to change here. All of the commitments made in this about air quality, about green space, about sustainable transport, they're all amazing. But if this road goes ahead, it undermines everything that they're trying to do. So when we met with him, we put it to him and sort of said, you must admit that this goes against everything you're trying to achieve. He made all the right noises, but our biggest concern is that the organisation, the executive body, Mersey Travel, may have been facilitating and helping Highways England with this scheme over the past couple of years. Again, information we've received via a Freedom of Information request. Why is it being left to members of the public to do all this digging? Is there some kind of master plan for the Liverpool City region and Sefton that we're not privy to? We will hold them to account, but equally we need this to go back up a level to central government and them to revisit it.
Thank you very much, Stuart.